give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. My name is Corey Tulaba. I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. This is the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. Albert, what is going on, my dude?
It feels like we haven't podded in forever. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but great to be back. I think I read somewhere, or I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet. I think we're like 50 days away from college basketball, so give or take a couple of days. So that's exciting. I've been watching as much film as I can with my new life stage, but it's been great. It's been really, really great. I'm excited to talk about, because the three guys we're talking about today, Corey, I think are guys that people are going to want to know about, that I think people may already have some questions about, might want to know a little bit of what their games are like. And so I'm really excited about the trio of guys we're going to be talking about today.
We do have an exciting trio of guys today. We're going to be covering Liam McNeeley, headed to UConn, Drake Powell, headed to North Carolina, and Egor Demin, headed to BYU. So three guys who are all like wingy, and they have, some fun skills. And I'm really excited to dive into their scouting breakdowns in the preseason, because what's cool, this specific group, it feels like their stock is a little bit all over the place. And depending on how you feel and what you've seen, like, you might have one of these guys in the top 10, you might have one of the other guys in the top 20, and then you look at somebody else's board and they're like the complete opposite of you. So I'm really excited to talk about them. And I think that we're going to start with Drake Powell who is headed to North Carolina. He played at Northwood High School, a public school in North Carolina. So the rare, high-level prospect who has played public school ball. He is listed on the UNC website at 6'6", 195. Not sure about his wingspan. He will be 19.8 years old on draft night. Where are we going to start with Drake Powell?
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Where should we? Offense? Offense is good. Not a fun answer considering I always say offense.
Yeah, we're gonna start. We're gonna start with the offense. Yeah. So, at what part of the offense do you want to start with? It looks like. Oh, I thought I deleted all of the notes that I took just now. And it turns out I didn't. So that's good. Let's start with the shooting, actually. Let's start with the shooting. Because I think that the shooting is one of those things that is going to separate Drake Powell as a prospect on how consistent he can be as a shooter, what kind of shots that he is knocking down. So what did you think about his shooting and shot making?
To be honest, Corey, I kind of went back and forth on it. I really, really wanted to get your opinion on it, because I think it's good. I think he will be a good shooter. The only thing, and this, of course, and why I want to shoot it over to you soon, is because watching him shoot, I felt like sometimes it took him a whole quarter to get a jump shot off. And what I mean by that is, like, I thought his release and stuff like that was really slow at times. Like, it just took him a while, but maybe it's just me. So wanted to get some feedback from you. But overall, I think he's going to be a good shooter. I think to start, at least for UNC, that might be how he gets on the floor. I feel like he's going to have to play a bit of an off-ball type of role. So the shot better be going in for him, because of the guards that they have heading into the season, with Cadeau coming back, and they got Jackson coming in, and they just have a plethora of guards. I feel like he's gonna correct RJ Davis. Forgot. Local guy for you, right? I just feel like he's gonna have to shoot it from outside, and I think he will. So let me stop there and hand it over to you. My only critique from when I watched him was like I thought the shot took too long sometimes, but totally ready and willing for you to tell me otherwise.
Yeah, I think it is somewhat of a long release. I I don't know if he's a guy I would consider like a knockdown shooter. I think he's a shot maker more than a shooter. I think that he's comfortable either off the bounce or the catch. But like you said, like I think at North Carolina, he is going to focus much more on his off the ball shooting and then, the on the ball juice that he may have at some point or he may not have. But he gets like a lot of elevation on his jumpers.
Yeah.
Which, even if it's a little long to get off, like because he's got a high release and he gets a lot of elevation, he can get clean looks. He's been a little inconsistent as a shooter. Like he shot 29.4% from 3 in the Nike EYBL. And then his high school season in his public school league, he was at 41% from 3. So, I don't know if teams are going to come in and being like, you can't leave him open. I think that he's going to still have to prove at the college level that he's going to be able to knock these shots down. I do think that he is a guy that is going to turn himself by the end of the season into a guy that teams are going to pay attention to. I think the mid-range stuff, like I think that's where he's most comfortable is, rising up in the mid-range when he's like, especially when he's creating his own shot. And for me, again, like we'll talk about like his creation ability. I think as a freshman in this role, his bread and butter is going to be like catching the ball, pump fake, 1-2 dribble pull-ups instead of doing a lot of self-creation. I think there is some self-creation potential there in the long term. I just don't know if we're going to see it next year. And to be honest, I don't know if that's going to be a big part of his game, even at the next level. I think I'm a little bit lower on like his full scoring arsenal than maybe some other people are that, I've seen like either do articles or videos on the internet, even, without, outside of no ceilings. Like I know Tyler Metcalf is really high on Drake Powell with us, but even in other outlets, like I've seen, and I'm a little more skeptical of some of that stuff, I think.
Sure. Corey, I actually agree. I think for me, I think the handle needs to be tighter for us to get to that point where we look at him as like a guy that can really go and get a bucket for himself. But to his credit, like we talked about, Corey, I think the mid-range stuff was where, he was super comfortable. I think, but it's hard, right? Because watching his high school tape, as you mentioned, he played for a public high school, wasn't the highest level of competition, had a lot of smaller guys guarding him that had no chance of really challenging his jumper. And so I think he used that to, his advantage benefit sometimes, just kind of pulling up in the mid range and using his height and his high release to get that over these smaller guards that once again had no chance of blocking it. And also, Corey, something that I was thinking about today as we were preparing for the pod. Once again, the 3 guys that we're talking about, they all played in different contexts. We talked about Drake Powell, and he played for a public school. We're going to talk about Liam McNeeley, who played for Montverde. We're going to be talking about Egor, and he played for Real Madrid. They played in different contexts, right? And I know when Tyler Metcalf, he wrote his piece on Drake Powell, he just completely excluded all like film of Drake Powell playing in high school. And he was like, the level was low or whatever. But it really did make me think, Corey, and this is kind of a sidebar and I apologize, but wanted to get your take on how you kind of weigh and balance out those different contexts. So, watching Drake Powell in that context, Egor in his, and Liam in theirs, like, how do you weigh all of that, when you're evaluating these players, just because it's hard, right? Because like with Drake, as we mentioned, he has such an athletic and physical advantage over other guys. And then obviously like Tyler did in his piece, then you can go to the EYBL stuff. And then Igor's playing overseas against a different, type of talent there. And then we have Liam at Montverde. How do you kind of level all that in your mind as you're evaluating these guys was something that I wanted to ask you actually.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it depends on like what role you envision the players playing. Is it a complementary role? Is it a more on-ball role? I think it has to do with like, for Drake, like where are the consistencies in his numbers? His finishing, he was like 83% or something overall in
Yeah.
his public high school, which is absurd and clearly not something that is going to translate at that level.
Right.
Like how many centers even finish at that rate? But he was 63% in the EYBL, where the athleticism and the talent is a little higher, right? So like clearly he does have the ability to finish at a high level because he's athletic. Clearly there's some touch there, right? So like to me, it's like, all right, is that going to translate? Like, all right, we can see that is something that he's shown to be consistently good at. The shot, obviously, like you mentioned, maybe the athletes aren't as good, they're not as big, they're not as long, so like the closeouts aren't affecting him as much in the high school level, where he shot it a little bit more poorly in the EYBL. Now that's not the end all be all either, because if he is more of an off-ball guy, or he's isn't playing with the right playmakers, then maybe he's not getting the same looks he might get at UNC, where he's not going to be the focus, where in the EYBL it's like he's going to be one of the guys that you're actually paying attention to all the time, right? I think he also played with Isaiah Evans, right? Like,
Yep.
So it's like, but he's still going to be one of the top options, where in North Carolina, he probably isn't, like outside of in the backcourt, like Cade Tyson's transferring in, like there's just a bunch of guys there. So his looks might just be cleaner at the next level. So maybe there's a middle ground between 32% and the 40%. Maybe he's 35 or 36. When we talk about Egor, I think it's interesting because we've seen that some of these Euro guys who go and play college ball don't translate as cleanly, and with Egor specifically, like the film that I watched, because it was one, the most recent, and two, where he was actually playing, because he wasn't really getting major minutes with his main club, right? Were like the Adidas Next Gen tournaments.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, well, he's playing primarily against like his age group there. So, similar to like the, EYBL type of stuff, but we didn't get to see him in like, this summer in the FIBA tournament, because he's Russian born and like they're banned from international competitions or whatever. So like our tape is from last year, so maybe he got better since then, and it's not fair that we're really high on some of the other guys that we've covered. But he's going to be a tricky one, because like he's kind of an on-ball guy. Is he going to be able to play off-ball and share those duties? How is he going to translate to the physicality of college? It's going to be interesting. I think it really depends on so many different factors, and like I don't know if you can stick to like a strict one-to-one. Like this is the blueprint that I use all of the time. I think you have to take into consideration certain things and trends and what the roles are going to look like at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Corey. Just because the main reason why I was thinking about it was actually not even like it started with Drake Powell, and it wasn't even his shooting. For me, it was his passing, because I was thinking about I was watching him, and I was like, oh, there are some flashes of some nice passing with him. But at the same time, like then my brain was trying to reconcile, like, oh, is this just happening because like he has like a foot over everyone he's playing, and it's just easier to see the floor and things like that. So like I was just trying to reconcile all that and thinking about these guys and wanting to evaluate them fairly, and thinking about how I want to, because eventually, like at the end of the day, we know pretty soon we're going to be submitting big boards and doing mock drafts and all that stuff. And so for me, like I'm just trying to preemptively kind of prepare for all of that, and so was trying to weigh all that. And yeah, but going back to our original point with Drake, like I think with him, Corey, it's an interesting thing. And off the record, we talked about him, I think about a month ago, after we had finished recording a pod. And I told you then, and I still feel that now, I'm not 100% sure on him, because I personally felt like there are some moments where like I felt like his focus kind of came and went. And if we're projecting him to be like a number one option initiator type of guy, I just didn't know if he like had that alpha in him was the biggest thing that I
Mhm.
was thinking about. And after doing like the deeper dive, I don't want to get to a point where I'm saying we've done a deep dive yet, at least me personally. I'm still kind of there where I don't know if I see him as a guy that you'd be drafting to eventually turn him into like a number one option, right? I see him more as a guy that might be a supporting player, which isn't bad, right? We've seen
No.
supporting players that have outbursts where they kind of play like number ones. And I think the perfect example of that is kind of like a Mikal Bridges, right? A guy who was a support player in Phoenix, and then he gets traded to the Nets, and then for like a half a season goes absolutely off. And then the following season, he kind of comes back to earth. And now where he's at with where he's like what he'll be with the Knicks is he's probably going to be like a third option, right? With the Knicks. And that's kind of going to be great for him, and he got paid, and he's highly regarded in the league. So when I look at Drake, I'm wondering, could he be that type of player, right? Could he be like a high end role player that on a certain night might get you 35 points, right? But usually will be at around like, I don't know, 18 to 20 points, maybe even lower, but a guy who can give you a multifaceted type of game, because eventually we're going to talk about his defense as well. But overall, Corey, just to get back to everything, I just thought the eval with him was a little bit tricky. And where I'm landing with him is I don't necessarily see him as a guy that you'd be drafting to develop into like a number one option.
No, I'm right there with you. You said Mikal Bridges. The first when I started watching him, like I'm trying to figure out stylistically, what does he remind me? Maybe role, what's that look like? I think if he reaches his upside,
yeah,
I was picturing a role like Michael Finley on the Mavericks, where it's like more of like a third option, right?
Sure.
Like you had Dirk, you had Nash, and then like Michael Finley was like the third guy.
Sure.
He almost operated as like the second scorer, right? Because he was like a little bit more obviously aggressive at that point than Steve Nash was. But kind of like a potential two-way athletic guy. Now, I think his self-creation kind of has a long way to go to kind of get to that point, because I think Finley was like a little bit smoother than Drake Powell. You mentioned his playmaking. Yeah, he's shown some flashes and stuff, but like I don't think his processing is where it needs to be. Like I don't think he anticipates where guys are going to be rotating. So he'll throw balls that lead to turnovers that are just like, that's not going to be there at the next level. And so I feel the same way almost about his self-creation. I feel like he's so straight line drive heavy that like when he's trying to do things sometimes, like to me, like at the next level, I could see him just being like, oh, this dude's gonna like barrel into somebody and it's gonna be a charge. Like, so I think, the thing about him though is like when he gets in the mid range, he can just rise up and shoot over you and hit tough shots. So like clearly there's something there, but it's like I don't want him to have the ball and be a guy who's making decisions at with high usage. I want him to be a guy who's gonna, go and get buckets, and that'll be his focus, make smart decisions moving off of the ball, definitely make guys pay off rotations, but like isn't trying to manipulate ball screens and whatever. Like, I think he's more like quick reads rather than a guy you trust to do it all. Cause for that, I just don't see a lot right now. Maybe next year he shows something different, but like, at the same time, like how often is he going to have the ball with RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau running, offense so much, because those guys are just way better decision makers. And like RJ Davis is like, he's going to be somebody who's probably in the running for player of the year. Right. So like national player of the year. So in that context, like North Carolina might be good for him because his responsibilities might let him play to his strengths.
Yep. No, I love that, Corey. Everything that you mentioned, we've already talked about, right? With the roster and the situation that he's going to be in, it's kind of automatically, just organically going to kind of limit some of the things that he's going to be able to do. But no, I'm right there with you. I think the Finley comp is such an interesting one, right? A guy that doesn't get mentioned a lot, when people think about, scorers and two guards and whatever, but a guy that was a really, really good NBA player. And eventually, towards the tail end, obviously he fell off a little bit, but, age happens to everybody. But a guy that, during those years with Nash and Nowitzki and Josh Howard was a guy that was a very valuable player for that team. And so if Drake Powell can get to that level, that's I think that's a pretty nice outcome for him.
I mean, it's a high bar.
It's
a high bar. But, look, if he's just like a fourth option on offense who's like, focusing on the defense and rebounding and stuff, then that's something interesting too.
Yeah.
You just maybe don't take that guy as high as
Top 10.
the top 10 necessarily, right? You mentioned like the alpha, the dog in him. Like I don't like if you watch the state championship game that his team loses, I just kept going, you got to do more. Now he came out in the third quarter and went on a little run, but it was like, it just always felt like you just wanted him to get the ball, take over. You're the best player on the floor. Like, let me see it. So he doesn't have to have that if that's not going to be his role. Right. If he's more prone to be playing off of other guys who are going to do that. But yeah, like, so offensively, to me, he's a third option. Like that's what I think his ultimate role is. That's what I think is going to be best for him.
Yeah. But Corey, I just want to say, I think the reason why you and I are bringing this up right now is because of exactly what you said previously, in that the way that people are talking about him, I think there are people out there that are projecting him to maybe have that skill set to be a number one. And I think that's why it's important for us to bring that up, where we do have some real question marks about that alpha and some of the self-creation stuff, is because, yeah, Corey, you're right. If we're gonna project him to be like a third, fourth option, then yeah, this could be a glowing podcast and a glowing review of his game, right? But because there are some voices out there that are like, hey, this guy can be XYZ type of superstar, then I think you and I have some questions on why we're kind of projecting this context.
I think at this point of your development as a player, like you see the creativity that's needed to be like a top tier scorer. There's like a ball handling slickness. There's shake. There's, all this stuff that I just think is really hard to develop to a certain point. And like, if you think of like the some really good third options in the league, like even that is, you have to have like a certain level of polish to get to, right? Like, so it's not to say he needs to hone that stuff in and totally transform the way that he creates space to make a ton of money if he focuses on other stuff. Like guys get paid hundreds of millions of dollars to do the dirty work. And if you like look at how he rebounds the ball on the other end, he goes and gets rebounds. Like he is completely different, I think, than the way that he is offensively. Like he's going and getting the rebound. So like, if he does that, if he defends, right, and like we talk about the defense, we transfer over to that, like he's got the great physical tools. He moves well laterally, right? He's got length. He bothers shooters. He can come over and like protect the rim from the weak side. Now, I'm always weary about how valuable we consider that to be for, like, to me, he's like a 2-3 swing wing rather, I think like secondary rim protection, when we talk about it, it's like even the elite shot blockers are really blocking 2 shots a game, 2.5 shots a game. And it's like, how many shots is he really going to impact at the rim? You know what I mean? Yeah. But, if he can be a pest on the ball and I think get better off the ball, like I think he's good at rotating over and making athletic plays, but a lot of times he's just like completely face guarding his man and taking himself out of the play. And I thought it was maybe just something he was doing in high school because it was like schemed that way. But then like I also saw him doing it in the EYBL and I was like, this is just something he's doing. And it's like, you're taking your man out of the play, but you're also taking yourself out of the play a lot of times to be in the right spot in rotation. So I think he's got all the tools to be a two-way guy. I just, what kind of level of the two-way guy I'm a little more skeptical on. So to me, that's a guy who like, yeah, he could definitely work his way up in the lottery, but a lot of it's going to be based on like heavy projection because I don't think his offensive role is going to be enough to show that, and you're going to be betting on tools maybe more than production. I think that could be scary in a lot of cases, and I think right now where I see him, I would be afraid to kind of bet on him too high, given kind of like where I have other prospects right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean the the way that people are talking about him, right, and the value of the pick that you might end up using on a guy like Drake Powell, and then what you end up getting back. Maybe it's
but on the flip side, to kind of play devil's advocate for myself, I think he's a pretty safe pick.
Yeah.
So if he's, there's probably a pretty good chance you look back, you're like, oh yeah, he's going to be one of the 14 best guys. Mate, we'll see, right? We'll see how his college season goes.
Can't we look at it as like, what if he's this year's like Patrick Williams or?
You see, I was thinking about Patrick Williams earlier, like today.
Yeah.
because I had that same thought. And then part of me was like, yeah, but Patrick Williams is taller.
True. Because I also thought about DeAndre Hunter, but
And
then
he
the
was
same thought came.
strong.
Yeah, Hunter was also taller.
You know, because he's kind of one of the, like, he's listed at 6'6". Who knows if I've seen him listed at 6'5", you know.
Right.
So I think he leans more 2'3" than like 3'4".
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like, I think though that kind of player, not always as valuable as the guys who are just slightly taller, because you're betting, you know, them to be more versatile defensively and, you know, guarding multiple positions, all that. So, yeah, I feel like I've been watching different film than like most people, but like I feel like I see what I see right now, and like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, Cor, and for us, like I just feel. I mean, we had this exact conversation about a month ago off air. So I feel like even after going deeper into the film, I still feel exactly the same. Like I had real question marks then, still have them now, and would like to see how this all turns out during his freshman season at UNC. But once again, like the caveat there is that the situation I don't think is going to offer us a lot of answers that'll kind of have us leaning in a different direction. And once again, and Corey, you said it before, but our like the overarching tone that we're taking with him is not that we think he's a bad player. Like you just said, he's probably a safe player, and maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling, but that's okay. That's still worth a lot. And for even him to get to like a third option type of level, I still think there's a lot of work to do, because like the name that I mentioned before, if he wants to get to Mikal Bridges' level, he's got a lot of work to do. That's not something that's going to be easily attainable for him. You know, there's still a lot of work for him left to get there. So yeah, I like the player. Wouldn't say I love him, but I'm excited to see if maybe he's able to shine in the role that he plays this season. So that'll be interesting.
And like, just to, again, like give a different perspective on like third options in the NBA now on good teams, like Paul George is the third option on an NBA team.
Yes.
You know, like that's how much talent there is in the league.
Right.
So, you know, it's hard. And like Gregory Castillo said in the chat, like better be Josh Hart. Like, you know, like that's kind of the player that's kind of the bar you have to hit, right? Like such a valuable player, but more of a fourth or fifth option on the court. And he got paid. He's making a lot of money. That's really valuable. But like the NBA is just so good. And to me, I just don't know if I don't see the self-creation for the other stuff. But if the shooting comes around in a big way, then obviously like there is, you know, some kind of Mikal Bridges-esque path. I think just Mikal, a guy like him, he has better physical measurements and stuff, probably. So, all right, let's move on. We got Liam McNeeley and Egor Demin up next. Which guy do you want to talk about? We kind of touched on Egor. Do you want to hit him?
I was going to say, let's go international. Get the passports out.
Yeah. So on BYU's website, he's listed at 6'9". They did not have a weight, so the EuroLeague website has him at 204, which he is tall, so that accounts for something, but he's always looked pretty slim to me. So we'll see. His draft night age is 19.3. Like we mentioned earlier in the show, Egor is Russian-born, but he's headed to BYU, and he is developed in the Real Madrid system.
Right.
So a very different developmental system, as Albert alluded to earlier. Where should we start with Egor? Because there's a lot of different ways that we can go here.
Yeah. I just want to have a conversation, Corey, about him. And I know that's what we're doing right now, obviously. But just like I want to get your overarching macro thoughts on Egor. Also, I watched a video on the BYU Instagram where he teaches us how to say his name. So he says it's pronounced Egor Demin.
Egor Demin. I love it.
Yes.
Because you know what's funny? On the website, they have like the little audio option where they record all of the players saying their names.
Yeah.
So but he didn't have one. So all the other players, so maybe when they recorded it, he just wasn't over yet. So Egor Demin. Love it.
Egor.
Way cooler.
He was saying some stuff. I don't remember, but he says that's how you say it. Egor Demin.
Egor. That's a way cooler name, I think.
Yeah, it's cool.
You know.
But Corey, I just wanted to talk about him in like a big picture sense, because as I mentioned before, like this trio had me thinking about a lot of different things and like how I'm viewing them and how I am absorbing their games as I'm watching the film. Because with Yegor, first thing, Corey, I want to mention, watching his tape, I was like, oh, I love Hugo. Like I'm just watching him play, and like Hugo just keeps popping off the screen. I'm just like, I love this guy. But there are things that I think are really interesting about his game. But I also have some like real question marks about the translation of it all and what that looks like. And so a part of me is very grateful that he's going to be playing college basketball because of what you mentioned before too. Like there are real question marks, but some of those questions are going to be answered by the sheer fact that he's going to be playing college basketball. So I'm really excited for that. But overall, just I had some things about him, but I wanted to throw it to you, Corey, and give you an opportunity to wrap on him a little bit, just because I think he's very interesting, but also I'm very confused.
I think that he can end up being a guy that people are talking about in the top 5. And I think he can be a guy that's like, is he transferring schools next year? You know, like, but I am a little bit closer to him being like a top 5 kind of guy than I am the opposite. I freaking love his game.
Yeah.
I love it. I think there's so many interesting, intriguing things. I love his feel. I love his playmaking, and we can dive into the specifics. But at the end of the day, what does it come down to? You got to shoot that thing.
Yeah.
You got to shoot the rock. And I don't know about it. He's another guy like Drake who had 2 different shooting percentages. Now, Yegor was playing in the same competition where I was measuring his shooting percentages. But in the most recent, in the 2024 Adidas Next Gen tournament, which is like 8 games, so obviously not like a super high volume and sample size, right? He was 18% on 51 attempts. Not great. Not great. He was also 71% from the free throw line. Now, in the 2023 Next Gen tournament, he was 42% on 43 attempts, also in an 8-game sample size, but he was 64% from the free throw line. Low volume from the free throw line on both. He doesn't get to the rack all that often as far as drawing contact. So, you know, you look at 94 shot attempts over the course of like, let's say the last year and a half, whatever it is. And it's like 2 polar opposites. So maybe he was hot one week. Maybe he was just cold, right? There's not this extended thing that we could, stretch that we could see where we can get a better feel. So then you got to go, all right, so what does the shot look like? Right? What does the shot look like? Free throw percentage is not great. Inconsistent 3-point numbers.
Yep.
And there are times where I think it looks really smooth.
Yep.
And there are other times where it's like there's like a hitch, and I'm like, I hate everything that just happened there. So I think there's going to be, he needs a lot of reps. I don't think he's as bad as the 18%. I don't think he's as good as the 42%. But there are things functionally that he kind of has to change. He snake bites a lot of his releases.
Yes.
He finishes high, but he short arms it. He doesn't come to like full extension. Sometimes he finishes and his back is like a little bit like hunched over, oddly, but then on the positive side, he shoots shots off movement. He shoots some shots off the bounce. He takes shots off the catch. So there's like a versatile shot profile, right? He's not afraid to shoot. He was shooting nearly 6 a game over the last 2 Adidas Next Gen tournaments. So he's not afraid to let it fly, which is a good indicator. It's a real struggle for me to kind of pick a lane, and it feels like a cop-out to say he's in the middle, because I feel like chances are he's not going to shoot it that well.
Yeah.
But I hope I'm wrong.
So number one, I feel great about my eval because everything you said about the shooting, I actually had that. So for once, I feel like I actually evaluated a shooter correctly because he does short arm it a ton. He snake bites it all the time. But Corey, what I wrote in my notes is that when he makes it, it looks really good.
Yeah.
And when he misses, it looks really bad. And I think that really speaks to what you said before. I think he just needs more reps, right? Like I think that's a consistency issue that I think can get kind of evened out with him just getting in the gym and taking more shots and working on the jumper, because when it goes in, it looks really good. When he holds the follow through, it goes in a lot. It's just when he snake bites and he gets a little excited, especially off the dribble, sometimes he'll get really saucy and then just, kind of snake bite short arm stuff. And it doesn't look great, right? And he has some gnarly misses in it on his film as well. But overall, just like in my notes, I wrote, I believe in the jumper and I like his confidence in it, but I wouldn't bet my life on it, is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm nervous about it, but I like it. Something that you mentioned before, like even when he, gets to the rim and stuff, like very right hand dominant, very few left hand finishes on film. And he does that thing where, he'll get to the left side of the basket and, try to go back to his right hand to finish and stuff like that. But just in terms of the shooting, and also like no real mid-range stuff to talk about with him. There were a couple like to quote the great Walt Clyde Frazier, he had a couple like fallback baby jumpers on film, but just not a ton of mid-range stuff. But
there was one mid-range shot though against Ulm in the fourth quarter
mm-hmm.
where I got up out of my seat and did a lap because I was like, oh my goodness. He like drove right, stopped at the right elbow, spun off of it, seamless, smooth footwork, and just buried the jumper. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so pretty, very advanced, like real shot maker stuff. Kept it simple, wasn't dancing with the rock, which is something that I like about him. Like, he's a good ball handler, but he doesn't like overly do it. He's like making quick decisions, whether that's like flying off a screen, moving the ball, making a play, whatever it does. So like, I was just like, wow, like if we can see stuff like that, but there wasn't a ton of volume, whether it was like with floaters or the mid range. So there's not a lot to go on. And I want to see him like kind of get to those elbows more consistently and punish drops, because I think that's going to help his playmaking even more, than it already has, which is his playmaking is really good. It's a strength. So, but again, like shots got to go in, and like even in the small volume in the mid range, didn't shoot it super well in the mid range, right? So, a lot to like, a lot to be concerned by.
Another thing, Corey, with his offensive game, you mentioned it, his handle. Looking at his like body profile, he just looks like a long, lanky, skinny guy that looks really stiff. But I actually thought he was really flexible. And I wrote that in my notes. Like there were some drives where like he was like turning his body and like getting in weird positions to finish. And I was like, oh, that's like a flexibility, dexterity that I was not expecting with him at all, that I was really impressed by. I like what you said about him keeping things simple, because if you watch the game against Milan in that next gen tournament, he was getting to the rim like beautifully. Like he was using jabs and little crossovers to just absolutely cook. Like the guy that guarding, I don't remember who it was, but just could not stay in front of him at all. And I was like, oh yeah, he didn't use like a million different moves to get there. It was like really clean, really simple, but just an absolute terror. Like the guy could not stay in front of him at all. And so the thing that like, I was really excited about, obviously we're going to get to the passing soon, but the handle and flexibility that he has for a guy that tall and long, I was really impressed by.
Yeah, I actually put that in my finishing section. Good body control and flexibility.
Yeah.
He's much bendier, like you said, than he looks like. And like I think that, for all the shin angle people, like I think, he's got some of that too, where he can kind of get low and play high and low, and change, that kind of stuff when he is making moves, and that makes him unpredictable.
Yeah.
And, but I think, like you said, like in his dribble, he uses it to play with pace and, kind of make sharp moves in a smooth way that doesn't look awkward. Like he just looks like a very natural mover. And if he really is a legit 6'9", even if he's 6'8", like that's why he's interesting. If he was like 6'4", right, and like 6'5", this would be somebody who's a lot less intriguing, because now we're questioning the shot of somebody who's not that tall. But if you're looking at a 6'8", 6'9" kind of initiating guy who I think he actually has like pretty decent finishing chops. Like I think he's got pretty soft touch when he's finishing, uses scoop shots. Like he's had a couple of dunks that were kind of impressive. Like he doesn't have like crazy bounce, but like there were a couple we were like, oh, okay. I think he's got really good feel cutting off of the ball. He was 70% as a finisher in the half court. In the 24 next gen tournament, 64.6 overall, much improved from his 2023 numbers, which were he was 50% overall. But it was on super low volume. He got to the rim way more last year, which is a good trend. So, and this is all stuff, before we even get to the playmaking, which he's one of my favorite passers in the draft. I feel like we've been covering really fun playmakers so far.
Seraph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, which was really
Traore,
fun,
like
Traore, Kasparis, right?
Mm-hmm. Really fun playmakers.
Yeah, but Corey, just like, okay, I can start the combo, right, on the passing. Like with him, the touch, timing, anticipation, creativity, maturity, I think it's all there. I think it's all there. I think he's a really high level passer. I really enjoyed watching him operate in the pick and roll. It was one of my first notes about him. I'm not saying he's a perfect passer, but considering age and all that stuff, and obviously, once again, like we weren't able to watch like a ton of his film, but overall, from what I saw on tape, I'm like, man, if he can take this ability and showcase this in college, I like the counting stats. I think he averaged like 3 assists, 4 assists per game, and people will be like, oh, 3, 4 assists, like what's the big deal? But you really have to watch it for you to understand the type of passer that he is. And I'm really excited to see how BYU ends up utilizing him this season. I really do hope they kind of hand him the keys and let him operate, because I'd like for him to make some mistakes this year. I want to see him kind of hit some bumps and throw some passes that might put him in trouble a little bit. But I want to see how he learns and acclimates to the college game, because in my opinion, the instincts and the vision and the touch and timing of his passing is really high level. So seeing that on the college basketball level, I think is going to be really interesting. So I do hope he gets that opportunity to shine, is where I'm at right now.
No, I'm really interested too. And I do think that he can get a little loose and force some passes, because he does see the court. And a lot of times when you're throwing these skip passes, like if you don't put enough zip on it, like it's going to get intercepted. So I'm looking forward to seeing like how he reacts to defenses making those kind of anticipatory, plays in the passing lanes. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he reacts to like the bump, I think, in physicality by guys who are like 5th year seniors and they're like 24-year-old men, and they bump him. And now he's got to, make a play in a spot that, he didn't think he was going to end up in. Because I'm with you. Like this dude's pace rocks. The way he plays off hesitations, how patient he is. He can hit wraparound passes. He's got the live dribble stuff. He uses height to see over the top. He makes quick 0.5, one more hot potato touch passes to a guy that leads to a quick bucket. His placement, I think, is typically really good when he's passing to shooters. He can, hit those cross court skips. So if he's just, kind of takes care of the ball a little bit better, I think it's going to be really intriguing. And I think, the playmaking is the number one thing. And you're looking at a guy who's 6'9", all of a sudden, who can make these plays, and he shows that at the next level. Again, like 6'9" initiators are really, really, in vogue. So it's going to be like hard for him to, I think, drop too far down boards if he can really pass like that, because that I think is going to translate. Like, I don't really have any questions about that. You know what I mean? Like the shot, yeah, I have questions about that, but we've seen tall initiator types who struggle with their shot still get taken high, right? Dyson Daniels. Now, part of that was he was a great defender, but Josh Giddey, another guy recently who was a big initiator. So the fact that he can make plays at that height and kind of, I think like also, even though if his shot's not always going in, I do think he operates well off the ball. You know what I mean? Like, even if he's not spacing it super well all the time, by cutting, by coming off DHOs, by, seamlessly transitioning into plays on the weak side when the ball swings his way and attacking. I think he's really, really intriguing. And when I watch him make plays at that height, I'm like, yeah, like, this is a dude. And like, obviously he's skinny right now, but like, he's young. He's going to get stronger. And as that happens and his body fills out, like, this is a really, really intriguing player. So, can his body get there? Right.
Yeah.
Can that develop? And because if his body develops, it's like, how is this guy not getting on, making an impact when he's on the floor, I think.
Yeah. Corey, I can't lie. You mentioned Dyson Daniels and Josh Giddey. And then my brain was like, okay, who were guys similar to before them? And I thought of Evan Turner, Michael Carter Williams, Ben Simmons. I was like, but
Michael Carter Williams was like 6'5".
Yes, true. You're right.
And he actually like had some moments. Like, he actually ended up sticking around the league for a little bit. Yeah, he wasn't like the rookie of the year Philadelphia 76ers version, right? But he was like this guy who turned himself into a defense first. Like, he had a good run with the Bulls, with the Magic, right? So like, even that guy stuck around. These big versatile dudes end up finding ways to stick around.
Yeah. And Evan Turner had a long career.
Ben
Simmons probably should be playing if it wasn't for all the other stuff he's going through. Yeah, rough. But Corey, I think this conversation has helped me a lot. I think where I'm at is like, I loved his game. I really enjoyed watching him. I loved everything I was seeing, and like, even defensively, I was like, there's some stuff that
there is.
Sometimes he gets absolutely like transfixed on the ball and like loses his man completely. Sometimes, but also
I think he's pretty good positionally. But young guys get lost sometimes.
Like, when have we not said that about a young player, right?
And he would take on tough assignments.
Yeah. And like, good length to him. Another guy that likes to play in the passing lanes. But I like how he moves on the floor. Like, I enjoyed all that. He's, once again, like, he's not this like stiff dude. Like, he's a guy that
he like shades guys to
exactly,
to a side and makes them go that way. He's got to add strength, defensively. Like, that's a big thing. He dies on some screens. You know what I mean? Like, I think like when it comes to rebounding, like, let's say like he makes a good rotation. He's the low man, right? He's in the right spot to tag a roll, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But a shot goes up and his man is in the corner. He's got no idea. Like, he turns his back and he gives up offensive rebounds because he just won't go and find a body and go get it. Whereas like Drake Powell, he's making sure that he's going to go get that rebound.
Yeah.
Egor doesn't necessarily go up and get it. He gets a good amount of boards because he's tall, and I think he's got good feel for where the ball's going to come off. But like at the next level, he might go jump in the air and somebody just comes up and rips the ball from him because he doesn't have the strength to push them off the spot. Right. So like, there are aspects of his game that are just like question marks. And that's why it's so fun that he's actually going to play in the college context, because we are going to have all those questions answered and get to kind of grade him on the same scale as a lot of the other freshmen. Same with Yakachunas, right? I'm excited to see him at Illinois for the same reason.
We got lucky this year with the international guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great international guys. So, he's interesting too, because like I was like, oh, who are guys in the league that kind of play like him? And it's hard to come up with, which maybe isn't a great sign too. Like,
it can be either, right? Like, maybe it's like, oh, he's a one of a kind, and like the league really needs this kid to come in and be himself. I don't know. I think it can go both ways, right?
Again, I mean, obviously, shot comes along, it becomes a lot easier. But like, he's not quite Josh Giddey, because I don't think he needs the ball quite as much as Giddey has needed it. Even though I think Giddey's improved in that aspect for sure. He's not quite the defensive prospect of like a guy like Dyson Daniels. If he's really 6'9", Franz is a guy who has struggled with his shot, right? Like, consistently, but Franz is a lot thicker and stronger than he is.
Right.
So like, Franz is to me like kind of like the guy I'm looking at, like if he gets stronger, can he kind of be a guy like Franz Wagner? Like that's kind of where my mind has wandered to. It's a high bar because Franz has been such a great professional.
Yep.
But that was another kid who was like played college ball, but had a lot of international experience. And his game is translated because of his feel, and like his ability to play multiple positions. So like Franz is kind of the guy I'm eyeing up, but like, Franz is just, I think, a lot stronger, but maybe Igor gets there. Maybe with weight training and, the college system, maybe a focus on that. Like he gets there and he just develops. And by the time he's 22, 23, he looks so much thicker and like he can play some kind of similar role to Franz.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, Corey, like I like him better than Drake Powell.
I like him a lot better than Drake
Powell.
Powell.
Yeah, me too.
Personally.
And I just want to say that because like I know.
But I think there's a world where Drake is safer because I think I'm more confident that Drake is probably going to shoot it.
But like, Corey, my point is that like Egor is the type of guy that like, even if you miss, I would be happy taking that bet is my thing. Like just because the baseline skill set plus size plus feel, I'm like, I'd rather take him and be wrong than not take him and regret it later type of situation.
If the draft was now, if the draft was today, maybe he just, the physicality gets the best of him and he's got to like stay another year in college and, but where we're at right now, I'm with you. I think the swing on him is, I would much rather take a guy like Egor than Powell, who I like as a prospect, but I don't think offers the same kind of like intriguing upside. So let's transition to our final guy. Let's talk Liam McNeeley. I really want to know kind of how you feel about him. I guess first, let me kind of break down the specifics. Listed at 6'7", 210 on UConn's website. He'll be 19.7 years old on draft night. I've seen him live a number of times, and he looks as big as he's listed in person. So I do want to say that. He's headed to UConn via Montverde Academy. So I'm interested to see how you feel about Liam, the prospect.
I think Liam is the perfect guy for us to talk about here at the end because we had Drake Powell, who I'm looking at as maybe like a safer pick with not a ton of upside. And then we have Egor, who in my mind has a ton of upside, but also may not be the safest pick. And then we have Liam, who I look at as a guy who is very safe, but also has upside. So he is my favorite, I think. Man, it's hard because I really like Egor. But anyway, I really like Liam a lot. My thing with him, Corey, and I think you said this a couple months ago, or maybe it was even like 6 months ago, that you said in your mind, because I don't know if you remember this, Corey. I think I texted you about him a long time. This might have been a year ago, and you had already seen him live. And I was like, dude, this guy McNeeley. And you're like, bro, I've seen him live. Like, he's the next, like, he's going to be awesome. And I remember that conversation, and I watched the film, and I'm like, yeah, this guy rocks. I'm really, really excited about his game because no, now we can have this conversation. I don't think he'll ever be a number one. Sorry, that's not a crazy take. It's not even whatever. It's just a thing. It's not his game, right? But as like a really, really high level second, third option, I can see it. And the name that you mentioned, you said he was like a mix of somebody and Klay Thompson. And in my mind, I'm like, damn, Klay Thompson, like just an incredible second option for those dynasty warrior teams. And I look at Liam, he's gigantic, great frame, limitless range. And, obviously there are other aspects of his game, but just like the shooting with him is the marquee skill. And I love it. I really like him as a prospect is where I'll start.
Yeah. I have him as a top 5 guy coming into the year.
Okay.
I think that he plays so much like you would want a guy who's trying to fill a role similar to Klay. Like I don't think he's going to be the best shooter in the class, but I think there's a case to be made that he might be the best long-term shooter in the class. And if I'm projecting forward, I think that matters. And I think what's getting underrated is this dude is legit like small forward size. Like he's a big dude and he's strong. Like he's physical. Right. He's not like a skinny, like Grady Dick. I worried about Grady Dick handling physicality and stuff. I don't worry about that with Liam McNeeley.
Right.
Liam McNeeley's tough. He's a big dude. He looks like a big dude. He's competitive. He can shoot the crap out of the ball. Now, his numbers have been inconsistent, to be fair. I'm going to tell you, I'm very high on him, but his numbers are a little inconsistent. At Montverde, in a role where he's playing off of, Derek Queen and Cooper Flagg and Newell and Robert Wright and this all-star cast that Montverde always has, right? He was a killer. He was 46.4% on 140 attempts during his senior season. He was 50% off the catch, right? Like you left him open. He was going to make you pay, but he was just 71.4% from the free throw line, right? Now, in EYBL, he shot just 34% from three, but he was 85% on really good volume from the free throw line. So, like, to me, I think he's going to be a fantastic shooter, and I think he is going to absolutely kill in UConn's offense.
Yeah.
Like, whether you look at Jordan Hawkins, whether you look at, just got drafted by the Grizzlies. Yeah, Cam Spencer. Like the role that those two guys play, like, and the way that Liam's already accustomed to thriving in an offense where he's moving off of the ball, he's spacing the floor, he's cutting, right? Like Liam's a good finisher. He was 61% overall, 63% in the half court, has real bounce. He had 12 dunks, good footwork, finishes with both hands. He's like stiffer than Egor is.
Yeah.
But he's still able to go like up and under. Like he doesn't necessarily have the same flexibility, but he's still got good body control. I think he's going to kill in that offense. I think if you leave him open, he's going to make you pay for it. He's got NBA range. He's got NBA size. He's got awesome feel. This is a kid who can really pass the ball too. So he's going to attack closeouts, get into the teeth of the defense and make you pay. Again, like just cycling in these guys in that system. I think he's going to be a guy that is on the national stage. UConn's going for a three-peat. He is going to be the most highly regarded freshman on that team. He's going to shoot the ball. He's going to really keep that offense humming. He's a smart player. He's tough. He's going to defend. He might not be like some lockdown wing. He might not have the same potential as Drake Powell, right? But he's physical. He can body up. If you put it in his chest, he's going to take it.
Yep.
I think he's going to be in the top 5 conversation because 6'6", legit 6'7" shooters who have playmaking feel, could put the ball on the deck, could finish at the rim. Those guys don't grow on trees. This guy doesn't grow on trees. I think he's going to be a potential top 5 pick in this class. I've seen him multiple times. I saw him at the Jordan Brand Classic. He's talking crap. He's like in his element. The dude is, I think his self-creation is pretty limited, but like he can play at a pick and roll, and he can score that way. I think he's going to get better at that. And as he gets better at that, like with the stuff he already has, I think he's got way higher potential than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like Corey, I think, and everything that you said, like I agree with, and like even the flexibility thing, like compared to him and Egor, like I think also it's like a body composition thing. He's one of these long torso, shorter leg guys. So he looks a little stiffer, but I don't think he's stiff. I like what you said. Like he's not as flexible as Egor, but he's still got some flexibility to him. And Corey, I want to give credit to Metcalf, right, in the piece that he wrote about him, because at the end, he did highlight some of his concerns about McNeely's game, right? But he was like, at the end of the day, like it's not gonna matter. Like he's gonna be such a damn good shooter that some people might like blow some of the defensive concerns about him like out of the water, like may overblow that stuff. And like I just think he's going to be a good defender. He's a big body dude. Like he's every bit the height that you mentioned, but also like he's not built like Egor. He's got a big chest, big shoulders. He's a bigger guy. I just love the versatility with him offensively too, where yeah, you're not going to put the ball in his hands and be like, hey, go create all the time. But I think he's interesting. He offers versatility in another way where I think he's a really good screener, and he's a guy that you can have be the screener and also run ball screens at the same time. And of course, you're not going to ask him to run ball screens all the time, but he can do it. He has a good enough handle. He can pass, as you mentioned. He makes high level reads, and he thinks the game fast. So I've got no concerns about him offensively. Like as you mentioned, and that context he's going to be in at
It's perfect.
UConn, Dan Hurley's going to get everything out of him, and he's going to make him the best version of him. I think it's going to be fantastic. So if we think about the long tournament run that they're probably going to have, and him being at the center of a lot of that, a lot of their success, it's easy to see how a guy like him ends up in the top 5. So yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I loved his film. I love the way that he played off of Flag and Queen and Asa Newell, all those guys. Asa Newell, right? Asa Newell.
Asa, yeah.
I loved all of it. And so I'm really excited for him to see how he takes this opportunity at UConn and he runs with it.
Yeah, because he's going to continue to play off like high-level college players, smart guys who thrive in that system with the best coach in college basketball right now. You know, like you said, deep tournament run. I think he's somebody playing at Montverde, playing in all these all-star games. This is somebody who's not afraid of expectation. As long as he's not shooting 30%, like a guy like him, again, because he's legit tall, who is a dribble pass shoot kind of guy, and I think his defense is probably going to get underrated. How does he fall out of the top 10? If he shoots it like I think he's going to shoot it, how do you fall out of the top 10? Even if he doesn't get to show off a ton of other stuff in his game because he's playing in a system, I just don't see it, like how you can pass on that, because these guys do not grow on trees, and I think he's really going to shoot it. I really do, and I think he has the positional versatility that makes it worth your while. And again, he's not like a skinny guy that we have to worry about his body. He's going to continue to get stronger and more athletic. And I already think he's already at or above the athletic threshold that he needs to be at. So you add the competitiveness, the feel, all of that. Like, I'm just in. Again, you said it at the beginning. He's not going to be a number 1 option. Okay. That doesn't mean he's not going to be crazy valuable. It doesn't mean that he's not going to do so much for your offense just because of the threat of his shot. It's going to cause chaos within the defense because of how he can space the floor. I don't want to get too ahead of myself with, a lot of these guys. He's just so safe to me. He's just so safe. How do you look at that shot and go, oh yeah, he's not going to be a great shooter. Like, it's picturesque. It's the same every time. Like, even when he has to shoot it in different situations, quick release, on the move, all of that, like, it's balanced. The release point is the same every time. Like, I think he's getting underrated because he's not the self-creator type that some of these other guys may look to be. I think he's getting underrated as to what his potential is, because this is a dude who's going to score points. He's going to knock down threes at a high clip. He's going to move the ball and make high-level decisions. He's going to be he's just going to do so much for your team. He brings so much to the table, even if it's in a more simplistic kind of role. These are the kind of guys that you want on your team, in your lineup, as you move deep into the playoffs. This is a guy who's going to play in playoff games, in like high-leverage playoff games in my mind. So at this point, I think he's being underrated.
Corey, if you were telling an NBA exec right now, like, hey, you're going to get like maybe a lesser version or a similar version of Klay Thompson in the 2025 class, where are you taking him? Top 5. It's top 5. Like, it's not much of a conversation, right? And so if you could potentially get Klay Thompson in this class, you take him top 5, you go to sleep at night happy, excited, and ready for the future. So
yeah. And so shout out to everybody watching in the chat. Make sure you hit the like button, share, all that good stuff. But Dirty Dancer, friend of the program in the chat, I don't get excited by these Caravan types. He's way more dynamic than Caravan to me. And obviously he's younger. He's got way more ability in my mind to kind of create for himself consistently. I know that Caravan has shown a little bit of that, but Caravan's also older. So to me, like, he's got way more juice as a scorer beyond just shooting than a guy like Alex Caravan, who is more of just that kind of floor spacing role player. Like, I think that McNeeley has the potential to be like a number 2, number 3 offense down option on a good to great NBA team down the line. So I think that's, to me, where the difference is. And, you know, Dirty Dancer says his defense doesn't even sniff prime Clay. And it's like, sure, but he's a high school prospect who I think has shown really good stuff as an on-ball defender. He may not be lockdown, but if people thought that Clay was going to be an elite shooter who was also an elite defender in the draft, he would have gone way higher than he did, right? So, like, we have to project these things, you know, and part of it is going to be like his coaching and where he ends up in the NBA. But like, he's going to UConn, he's going to defend, he's going to make smart decisions, he's going to make shots, he's going to get easy buckets off, you know, movement. To me, this kid's a no-brainer. Like, I love watching him play basketball.
The last point I'll make, Corey, is I think he's a different type of athlete than Caravan is. I think McNeeley is actually athletic, and Caravan really struggles with that. So I actually don't see that comp at all. And no disrespect to Dirty Dancer. You always rock with us. You always support us. So not trying to call you out or anything, but just straight up.
That's what we love.
Yeah. And this is a conversation, right? We're here to talk about all this
opinions
stuff
in our chat.
Yeah.
If this is your first time, join in.
Yeah. But just I feel like different type of athlete. And yeah, I'm excited. And hey, if anything, I'm excited that he's going to be on the same team with Caravan too. Like, that, what the type of stuff that they're going to be able to do with those two guys is really exciting. So exactly. Yeah. It's going to be so fun watching that UConn team this year. So buckle up, everybody.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end this conversation, unless you got anything else on McNeeley.
No, I don't, Corey. This was a really fun group for us to scout. And as you said before, Corey, I like all of these guys. And I know we sounded like pretty critical of Drake Powell in the beginning, but once again, like, I don't mean to be, I hope people understood our tone. Like,
I think
it's
more, I think it's a more on the commentary that we've seen around the World Wide Web, and more of a reaction to that. And I want to be like, hey, like, tell me why I'm wrong. You don't think I want Drake Powell to be that Michael Finley type of prospect that, like, I see shades of consistently. Like, I want to see that. Tell me why I'm wrong. Like, hit me in my DMs or at me on Twitter and tell me, like, why you think I'm, you know, a little bit too low on Drake Powell. I would love that. Right. But that's what's fun about this point of the process. Like, we're breaking down high school film, EYBL, international. But like you said, Albert, what is it, like 50 something days, something like that? Like, we are fast approaching the college basketball season, and we're going to have a much clearer picture, you know, in a couple of months on where these guys are with their development. We've seen time and time again, some of these guys that we talk about, we might not be talking about them in December. You know, that's how the draft game works. That's what makes it fun. It's unpredictable up until draft night. Up until draft night, it's unpredictable. It's always unpredictable. So, you know, you always use the example, like, everybody thought Jabari Smith was a lock up until a half hour before draft night to go number 1, and he ends up at number 3. Right? So that's what makes this whole process fun. That's why everybody who is always tuning in and showing us love and support tunes in, because they love these conversations. They love getting on these guys early. I mean, this is amazing. The support that we have in, you know, September, breaking these guys down. It's awesome. You guys watching live, everyone listening on the podcast, like, you guys are the best. So continue to lock in on all of our shows. You know, we got guys coming back. We have new characters added to our cast. You know, No Ceilings year 4 is going to be really, really fun. So you can follow me at Corey Tulaba on Twitter, at NBA Draft Dude elsewhere. Follow No Ceilings NBA on all of the platforms. Albert, tell the people where they can find you.
You can always find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter and at GTGNBA on Instagram.
Yep. Head to NoCeilingsNBA.com. Subscribe. It's free. We have a bunch of great content. We have our No Ceilings Plus membership as well, which gets you in our Discord, gives you bonus content, A lot of cool stuff. Make sure you check out the film session we just did with Malik Mack, who was at Harvard last year and is now going to be bringing Georgetown basketball back, baby. So Big East, excited for that. We got some fun film sessions that, we should be doing coming up. So a lot of fun stuff, man. Lock in, subscribe, tell your friends. Until next time, we are out. Peace.
Peace.